Hi, everybody. Welcome to the panel discussion on where to live when you make the move to New Hampshire. The goal here is to provide guidance and advice, highlighting the unique qualities of the various regions of New Hampshire and help you make an informed decision when you do decide to move. Each of the panelists are going to introduce themselves and make a short statement about their topic or area of expertise. Then we'll get into some specifics and take your questions. So I'll pass it over to Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Vine. We moved to Portsmouth. We moved to Portsmouth about 2 years ago, and we love the. We chose the Seacoast because we felt like it had a level of services that we were accustomed to coming from Manhattan. New Hampshire's largely a rural state. But we felt like there was an urban fabric on the Seacoast. It's a little deceptive because it's arranged in kind of like a network of towns where each town only has 20 to 30,000 people, year-round residents, but they all function together as what I've come to call a network city, where if you get tired of what's going on in Portsmouth, you go over to Dover, or you can go to Exeter, Hampton, and so on and so forth. So the whole region as a whole is very urban. It also has beaches. New Hampshire has been rated as having the cleanest beaches on the continent. So it's pretty nice when the water's warm enough to go in.
I'm Jody Underwood, and I am the sole rural representative, I think, on this panel, even though it is the vast majority of the state. I moved to Croydon, New Hampshire, which is in the Upper Valley, 5.5, going on 6 years ago now. And the Upper Valley, the area I live in has Mount Sunapee, which is a great ski area. It's got Hanover with Dartmouth College, and so there's a lot of culture, although you have a liberal pocket there. That's, upside, downside, right? What I like about where I live in particular in Croydon, we're in the middle of nowhere. We have 210 acres. Our goals were to have property so that we don't have any neighbors, so that my husband could sit on his back porch and plink, and to raise animals. It wasn't an original goal, but we wanted to do something outdoorsy. So what I like about where we are is, like I say, we're in the middle of nowhere, and yet we're 5 minutes from the highway. We can get anywhere really easily. The other thing I like about Croydon in particular, and I'm not sure every rural town has this same thing, is my town's really hands-off. There are minimal zoning laws in our town, but they were so minimal, we're like, yeah, it's not going to get in the way of anything we're doing. Whereas other towns who are zone-free, that have no zoning, their towns can be more oppressive than our town. So don't just look at zoning laws, and I'm looking to Mark Warden for this because he's promoted some of the zone-free towns, and he's forgetting Croydon. So sorry, I thought somebody was calling back there, but it was Mandrick. All right, hi Mandrick. All right, I'm on Bardo Farm, by the way, if anybody has not heard of that yet. We'll be doing a pig roast later. Always put that plug in.
Woohoo!
Yeah, hi, I am Mark Warden, and I'm happy to answer any real estate questions for you today. I'm a real estate agent, and I live in the Manchester area in a town called Goffstown, which is effectively a suburb of Manchester. I just want to get a feel for the audience. How many of you do not live in New Hampshire yet? Okay, great. So quite a few. And we really encourage questions. Come up and use the microphone. And if you want to know about different areas, urban living versus rural living, zoning or no zoning, let us know. By the way, I moved from Las Vegas, Nevada to New Hampshire because of the Free State Project in 2007.
And I'm Dave Butler, and my wife Christine and I moved to Nashua, New Hampshire in the fall of 2011 for the Free State Project. We moved from Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm going to be covering kind of the southern half of the state. So, do we have any questions to start off? Otherwise, I can give a little question here. Okay.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
A lot of people that live in the southern part of the state, like Nashua,
Yep.
actually commute to work into Massachusetts. Is that correct? Can you give me a sense of how common that is?
It's very, very common. In fact, because of my job, I went to live in Nashua, which was very close to one of my customers' locations in Merrimack, but their main headquarters is in Boston. So I end up going to Boston, probably once a month. And I will tell you that drive at the right time of day is pretty good. But there are a ton of people that commute. I see a lot of New Hampshire license plates on my way back and forth to Boston.
And for those of you who don't know the state that well yet, you can get from Manchester to downtown Boston in about an hour on the weekends when there's not much traffic. So a lot of people do live, if they're going to move here and they get a job in the Boston metropolitan area, it's very easy to still live in New Hampshire, consider yourself a free stater, and go down there for work if you can't find the right job here in New Hampshire.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think anywhere you live in the southern part of the state, the economy is going to be tied up with Mass and Boston. I think it's a little less so in Portsmouth. It kind of has its own feel, or the Seacoast has its own identity, and I actually think it has more in common with southern Maine, whereas Nashua, definitely you feel like you're in the Boston ring. So depending on culturally or just where you want to spend your time, it's probably easier to get into Boston from Nashua. Portsmouth or the Seacoast, we try to generate our own entertainment and do a lot of stuff where we are, so make less use of the big city, quote unquote.
So as far as jobs go, because I feel like that thread's going here, the Upper Valley is actually really rich in jobs. There's a lot of technology jobs, and this bad economy hardly hit the Upper Valley. So it's something to look at. People don't, and you don't hear about it. You hear about Manchester all the time because there's so many people that live there already. But the Upper Valley is just also a really rich place to live. We're right near Vermont, and they're part of the Upper Valley, but we were just talking about the New Hampshire side.
So one cool thing, if you're going to commute down to Boston, we actually have the Boston Express bus line, which runs multiple times per day between sites in Nashua and Tingsboro, I think, and Boston. So you can get dropped off at South Station or at the airport, and it's a fairly cheap bus ride, and you don't have to, they have Wi-Fi, so you don't have to make that drive. Have somebody else drive you.
And honestly, there's a bus that goes from the Upper Valley to Boston. It's the best deal around. It's $25 one way with Wi-Fi and a movie, and people do that commute every day.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
So, how would you guys describe the Liberty scene in your area?
The Seacoast is a little more mellow than some of the other areas of the state. We have a lot of people who are established. They might be business owners, have families. There is a younger crowd that's moved in the past few years, but again, we're focused on building our businesses and our families, and are a little less active, certainly in civil disobedience or the political process. I think you're more active in entrepreneurship, becoming successful, and then being able to donate or volunteer and support causes that way.
The greater Manchester area has the largest concentration of Free State Project movers. Numbers in the hundreds, probably 200-300 people in that area. So the Liberty scene is very, very active. There's a private club there where Free Staters hang out, and also we've started to really connect with a lot of the local activists on other issues such as cannabis rights or gun rights. So a lot of the Ron Paul people, a lot of the Tea Party people who we met since we've moved here have really sort of coalesced into a very big activist group. So especially if you're involved in the system, you like the idea of electoral politics, and you're not totally disgusted with it yet, then I think you'd be very pleased in the Manchester area.
Or Concord as well. I think Concord also has a lot of politically active people.
Concord is only about 15 miles from Manchester. It's 25 minutes away, and so it's easy to shoot up there and testify at a hearing and work the room with your legislators and be active that way. So Concord, Manchester is a really nice corridor for that type of activism.
And so in the Upper Valley, so Grafton is also included in the Upper Valley. Probably many of you have heard of Grafton too, and we have a lot of friends in Grafton. We prefer Croydon, but no, we're not competing here, right? But what we do have is a monthly meetup where we do meet up with just all the people that live in the Upper Valley area, and anybody who wants to come, of course, is welcome. But more than that, I think in my area, the Free Staters that have moved up there are more about living. Just living, right? We're living our lives. We do what we do. We interact with our neighbors. We're good neighbors. And in some sense, that's the liberty part. We're surrounded by like-minded people, whether we tell them we're Free Staters or not. We just have a lot of friends up there, and we do lots of stuff.
Cool. So Nashua, we have a growing liberty scene. We have a lot of people that are coming in. We do a lot of social things. So with Nashua, we have a weekly social on Sunday night. We have trivia on Wednesday. We have picnics in the summertime. In the wintertime, we have a diners club that meets every month. So we have a lot of social activity that goes on in the Nashua area. Like Mark was saying, Manchester, they are the largest city by population, so they actually do have the most Free Staters right now, and they have a very, very active scene. Concord really is for the politicos, and Keene, if you're really into civil disobedience activism, that would be your place.
All right, you know what? I'm going to counter that on Keene. I notice we don't have any Keene representatives up here. And yeah, what you hear about Keene is the activism in the street. But there are a lot of Free Staters, people who've moved here for the Free State Project, who live in the outskirts of Keene and probably some inside. And it's rural, and they're raising animals, and they're living the lives that I just talked about. So there's all the possibilities everywhere.
That's awesome. Thank you. Cool. So I know in Nashua we have excellent shopping and really, really top-notch restaurants. We have a local chef who's actually nationally known. He owns 3 different restaurants. It's really great for the foodie scene if you're into that kind of thing. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the attractions in your area?
Attractions? Is that what you said?
Okay. So try to keep it positive. But I have to put this in a certain way. We, coming from New York, we have extremely high standards about what we eat and our entertainment and that kind of thing. And we definitely felt a difference in the Seacoast, just as a place that we thought we could live. There's really good live music. It's on the sort of circuit as people are making their way north up to Portland. I would say that of any region, I think that the Seacoast is most likely, or it is, but it's on a small scale, a place like Portland, Oregon, or Austin, Texas, where it is a bohemian place, is a great art community, and it's much more on the cutting edge of fashion and food, and we have excellent restaurants. We have Shio is a sushi restaurant just outside of Portsmouth. It's actually in a strip mall, but it's actually better fish than we ever had in New York. I mean, it's just, I don't know how they do it, but they fly in amazing fish. We've got multiple theater companies in Portsmouth. We've got lots of live music. The city doesn't die at 8 o'clock, which is a nice thing. I mean, people think of it as a small town sometimes when they drive through, but it stays open. There's just a lot going on. And there's a lot of civic organizations that keep things going throughout the year. Pro Portsmouth. In Dover has the Apple Festival. Exeter has its own things. You have all these towns, and you have these people. There's wealth, and people want to make it exciting, and that's all you need. You need great people that believe in excellence to be in an area, and it is excellent. And I think the Seacoast is one of those few areas in the country that really believes in that.
Wow, I'm sitting and listening to Mike talk about this, and everything he said is like, yeah, we got that. We got that. Yeah, we got that too. The only thing we don't have is Brooklyn bagels, and he has to hear me say that. The only thing we don't have in the Upper Valley is Brooklyn bagels. And I'm from New York City also, so my standards obviously aren't as high as Mike's, but
Newburyport, just over the border in Mass, has the best bagel I've had outside of New York, Abraham's Bagels.
You're going to have to bring me some one day.
I will.
But all right, so having said that, we've got just next door to my little town, and by the way, my town has 750 people, really small, really accessible. I'm on the school board. I'm the chair of the school board. Very powerful position, not. So there's this restaurant, this Mexican restaurant, not one Mexican worker works here, but they make the most awesome margaritas. They really do, better than anywhere I've ever had them. We're near Hanover. There's a lot of good restaurants there. There's theater there. There's community theater in New London. Where else were you? We have our own apple orchard. We don't need to go to another town for apples. And we do apples when we don't have a freeze like we have the last couple of years. We do have apple events. So we actually provide many of the events that go on. We have a potluck. We have workshops to come learn farm stuff. We've done apple workshops with our old-fashioned press, apple cider press. Attractions. Right, so Mount Sunapee and Lake Sunapee in the winter and the summer, this is a huge attraction. People from all over the state and the New England area come skiing and swimming and so on. That's our interior beach, I suppose. Not quite the Lakes District, but Sunapee's beautiful. And hiking, tons of hiking, cross-country skiing, it's all sorts of stuff. You like winter sports, rural's where you want to be. Just saying, not competing or anything.
Yeah, there are 101 reasons at least to move to New Hampshire, but it's not that big of a state, so you can go from the beach to the mountains in an hour, and you can go east to west in under 2 hours, and north to south in probably 3 hours. So it's smaller than some of the counties that a lot of you live in. And with only 1.3 million people in the state, it's smaller than a lot of the cities you guys live in. So you can get pretty much everything you want here, but it just may be at a smaller scale. In the Manchester area, we have what's called the Verizon Center. So that's the event center. If there's a big concert or the circus comes to town, they play hockey there. It's not the NHL, it's the farm team of the NHL. There's a baseball stadium there, but it's not the Major League Baseball, it's the farm team, AAA club. So there's pretty much everything you want in a scaled-down version, and Manchester, having about the largest population, has quite a bit to offer. There's also something called the Courier Art Museum that has some world-class exhibits. So we got it.
Well, and they also call it Manch Vegas, too, right?
Yeah, there's actually still gaming. They're allowed to have poker rooms around the state, and at one time there was a lot of that in Manchester, so its nickname is Manch Vegas. I don't like that, but they say it. I'm from Las Vegas, and they're not even similar.
So Nashua is actually very cool. We have a historic downtown area. There's lots of parks and bike trails, that sort of thing. It's the second largest by population in New Hampshire. So, we have a lot of the big city stuff as well as, some more rural, accessible bike trails and river walks, things like that. So, cool.
I think one little comparison is the center part of the state is much more what I think the average American is used to in terms of lifestyle, and the seacoast is a little more European. So coming from New York, we were used to. We didn't own a car. We walk everywhere. We shop at more boutique-y places. There are definitely big box stores and stuff, but it's going to be more demanding of you in terms of creating a life. There's, you're going to sort of feel like you have to sort of fight to be there a little bit, which we think is good. We want that, but some people don't like that. They just want to be able to go about their lives and get stuff done and have it be efficient and easy. And I would say it's probably not the easiest part of the state to live in.
One of the things I want to talk about was the mill buildings. For those of you who are from out west, you may not have seen mill buildings before, but I think Carla Gericka refers them as sideways skyscrapers, and it's pretty fascinating if you've never seen them. About 100 years ago, this was the textile capital of the world, up and down the Merrimack River, Nashua, Manchester, and a bunch of smaller towns around New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And if you have the chance during your visit here, you might go down and check them out. A lot of them sat dormant for decades, but finally the market came back and commercial developers have gone in and made condos, apartments, office space, and it's really a fascinating thing if you haven't seen it before.
Cool. So does anybody have any interesting new mover stories? New mover stories you want to share? As I understand it, somebody just recently moved to Manchester and had like 30 people show up in the rain to help them move in.
Yeah, this is a fun Porcupine tradition. What we do is when somebody moves to the state with Free State Project, we offer to help them unload. So usually we just post it on Facebook, and we say the people that own the house have to give pizza and beer, offer that, and then people just show up spontaneously and help them unload. And it gets bigger with every new mover because there's so many of us here, but often be 20, 30 people just show up unexpected and help you unpack and unload your moving truck. So we offer that to you as a bonus when you move here.
And Mark, could you talk a little bit about how people tend to move twice, right? They move here first, move into an apartment or whatever, kind of get to know the area, then buy a house, plant their roots. So I think moving twice it ties into that because we also help with that as well. But I think that's something very typical, so don't feel any pressure to find the right place immediately, right?
I think that's the way to go. I would recommend personally anyway, renting here for 6 months, 12 months when you first move to the state, because you really don't know what you're going to be most involved in. Unless your job is in a specific town, you have to move there just for that. I think it's better to get a feel for the place, see what you like to do socially, see which groups you hang out in, what things you like to do on your spare time for recreational purposes, cultural purposes, because you may, in my personal experience, when I first came to the state, I thought, oh my gosh, Portsmouth, that's it. Has an urban vibe, it's really hot. But I'm such a political hack that I really need to be closer to Concord, and ended up settling in Manchester, and it was great. So each person has his own personal interest, certainly, but the best thing to do is move twice.
We'll get Mark Warden one of these days.
Maybe. So we also have another way of looking at that. We welcome people to come stay on our property and test drive New Hampshire is what we call it. What we've done in past years, we have Bardo Farm Festival the end of May, and we say come for Bardo Farm Fest, stay for PorcFest. So camp out on our property, look around the state, see if, where you want to rent next, right? That might be the next thing to do, but it gives you a chance to do that. And honestly, you could do that all summer long. We wouldn't want you to... you could talk to me if you're at all interested, but, for short-term stays, say a week or something like that, absolutely. And lend a hand on the farm also for the property. We can always use that, so it's a win-win situation.
In keeping with Seacoast's kind of more mellow scene, I think the way that people are tending to come in is reach out to somebody, and if you're thinking about stopping by Portsmouth, Vanessa and I are happy to show you around and take you out for a drink and explain it to you. We do have people that will help you move in, but if you want to explore it, I think the best way to do it is just to reach out to someone who's there and get the one-on-one, and we'll happy to answer any questions.
To follow up on that, Mike, we have what's called the Welcome Wagon group of volunteers all around the state. So if you're going to come back for another visit and you want to check out different places and meet some Free Staters, meet some locals, get a feel for it, just let anybody on the Free State Project Facebook page know about it, and we'll help arrange that for you. If you want to go to Concord, the McGuires will come over and have coffee with you and show you around the Capitol. Mike and Vanessa around the Seacoast area, Keene, Upper Valley. People are spread out all over the state who want to welcome you and show off their place, and we're more than happy to do that. It's really a nice feature we offer.
So talk about the cost of living and cost of housing.
Yeah, it's an important question, and in general, the farther north you go, the less expensive it is to live for both rent and owning property. Closer you are to the Massachusetts border, generally, the more expensive it is. Just as an example, in Manchester, 2-bedroom apartments go from $750 to $900 a month. A 3-bedroom apartment might be $1,000. To rent a house in southern New Hampshire is anywhere from $1,100 to $1,800 a month. To purchase a home, you're looking at Probably average price around $200,000 in Manchester Concord area. Keene is about the same. Seacoast a little bit higher, probably looking at 250, 300,000. If you get close to the border, you're looking at 350 to 400,000 range. But up here in Berlin, we have some friends in the town of Berlin that are here today. You can get a pretty nice house for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. I don't know if that was enough information, Dan, but if you guys have more questions, please come up to the mic.
I mean, you know, Mark pretty much covered it, but he skipped over the Upper Valley area. And you know, that's okay. You know your areas, and you can talk about what you know. It makes sense. And I can't give you solid numbers on it, but we have the whole range in the Upper Valley. You go to Hanover, it's going to be more expensive. And if you're out rural, you can find lots of stuff for really cheap. I mean, people that hear what we paid for our property, we have 210 acres with basically a suburban style house, which is a little unfortunate, but a great house. And we wish it were a farmhouse in hindsight. And we paid on the order of $450,000 for all of that. And it was all built with solar, the whole thing. We're off the grid. It was like, wow.
So one thing to remember about the cost of living is, we tend to have higher property tax than other states. However, we don't have any income or sales tax. So that's something to keep in mind.
Right. And I don't feel like property tax is high in my town. We're of the lowest brackets in the state. And you can find that you can actually easily, there are maps, and I don't know where to find them, but in the Facebook group, somebody could point you to it, that actually somebody sat down and said, all right, here are all the towns, it's color-coded, which are the lowest, which are the highest.
That's on my website at porcupinerealestate.com. Please. We have a question there.
So where I live, I can go salsa dancing almost every night of the week. Ballroom dancing, contra dancing. So what does New Hampshire offer to me in that regard?
All right, I'm jumping in there because I'm the dancer. The Upper Valley area has one of the richest dancing areas I've lived in a while. Now you have to ask where I lived before, right? We have, West Coast swing is big in the Upper Valley. Yeah, she likes that. And we have salsa, there's a monthly dance, there's also other social dances, there's contra dancing in Vermont, there's English country dancing, there's Argentine tango, I could keep going. You can find almost anything you want in Alice's restaurant? No, in the Upper Valley. And you can't find that, I'm sorry to say, in Manchester. I have not heard. And actually, in the Seacoast area, there's decent dancing. Find a university, and you'll find some dancing. I think is a general rule around here.
Yeah, I don't really know the dance scene, but I can say that the Seacoast does have nightclubs. It has several that are open late. Many nights a week, so if you like to just go out dancing that way, then Seacoast definitely has that to offer. There are parts of the state that get a little quiet in the evening, and Seacoast is definitely not one of them.
Right, and actually in the Upper Valley there are bars with live bands every weekend. There's all sorts of stuff like that too.
I just want to add that there is weekly salsa dancing in Manchester on Wednesday in the ring. And also it's, as was said, it's easy to commute to Portsmouth or to Boston, to Portland or to Boston, where you find a lot of salsa and other dancing.
That's right, yeah. But you got to go all the way to Boston and Massachusetts.
You talked about house and land prices, but what about rent? Do you have any kind of thumb on the pulse when it comes to that, or has it been too long since you've rented that you might not?
Yeah, you're talking about rent,
Yeah.
renting apartments and such? Yeah, in general, you're going to pay the highest rents in Portsmouth and Upper Valley and right along the border. Nashua actually has a lot of rental apartment buildings, but they're sort of expensive. If you go up to Manchester or out in the suburban areas, you're going to have a little bit of a break. But one and two bedroom apartments can be $700-800, and 3-bedroom apartments can be $900 and above, depending on where you are. We can talk about the politics of different regions if you want.
One sec, just a note on that. So on the seacoast, the attention is on Portsmouth. It's kind of the heart of the seacoast, and people come in from other towns for entertainment and that kind of thing. But there are a bunch of excellent towns that are a little more low key and easier. Portsmouth's actually really hard to move into. We've had trouble. The rents are very high. It's been gentrified for 15 years now, and there's a lot of people who have second homes and stuff, and it just pushes up all the prices. And these crazy socialists are trying to stop all new development. So they're definitely there's a pinch for rentals in Portsmouth. But there's Dover, Exeter. These are wonderful towns. They have their own downtowns, and they do have affordable. Newmarket. There's UNH is right there, so there is housing for the college kids, and there's some good deals there too.
There's a really neat thing available if you just want to test drive New Hampshire for a few months and see what the winters are like, and that is renting a furnished place in a tourist area during the winter. So something on the lake Winnipesaukee or near the ocean may rent out for $5,000 a month in the summertime. Basically from Memorial Day to Labor Day is the peak season for tourism. But then those places are generally vacant during the winter, so they'll rent them out for $700-800 a month for a nice place near the water. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. So how many of you who are from out of state have school-age kids? Anybody? Very few. All right, so we're going to talk a couple minutes about education. You know, if you have kids, it's an important topic.
So what I know about education in New Hampshire, there's a lot of homeschooling communities all around the state. If you're interested in homeschooling, all right. I'm going to talk about Croydon for a second because I find my town voted for school choice this year. Well, actually, it was last year that they voted for it, but it takes 2 years for this to actually be allowed to kick in. And so, I mean, what happens, the way education works, and every town is different. So we have our own district of Croydon. Population 750, we have 3 people on the school board. And we have an agreement, it's called an area agreement with the neighboring town, Newport. And we agreed to send all our kids there, and they agreed to accept them all. And this is called an area agreement. It's an acronym for something that I don't remember. But at the end, it was a 10-year contract, and at the end of 10 years, if you didn't do something about it, it would continue. So we did something about it. Newport does not have the greatest schools. Croydon actually has a good reputation. We have a one-room schoolhouse, so that's one place to start. So it's multi-age classrooms. And it's one of the 2 remaining one-room schoolhouses in the state, as I understand it. I don't know where the other one is. I think it's in the White Mountains somewhere. And so what school choice means now, and it's going to start in 2014, the money is going to actually follow the kid. We don't call it vouchers. Vouchers is a bad word in New Hampshire. Don't know why, but it is. It's choice, which is awesome that they're looking at it that way. Private schools are on the list. Now, we're not the only town that has done this. There are other towns that have school choice. But ours is new, and so we're getting some media attention over it. I get email now and then, being the chair of the school board, saying, oh, I hear that you have this. I'm thinking of moving to Croydon for that. We welcome you. But private schools, but not religious schools, are on the list. So we have Montessori. So if your kids have different learning styles, you can send them anywhere. The money follows. And here's how the money follows. It's just the way we set it up. Different towns do it differently. We have set as a base tuition price, an anchor school is what we call it, the Newport tuition, which for high school is about $15,000 a year for a kid. I mean, just wrap your head around that, right? But that money will follow you. If your tuition costs more, some private schools have that, some public schools are more, then the parents pay the difference. But if it's less, then the town gets to lower their taxes next year accordingly. So it's a really nice setup that way. I don't know what else I want to say about that. Yeah.
So the Seacoast also has several Montessori options. We do have a homeschool community that's vibrant. There's a lot of families up Dover, Barrington area, and they all, the kids all hang out with each other and socialize. And I think for a while they were alternating subjects. I don't know if that's still going on, where for each day they would go to a different person that was their expertise. But we also have Phillips Exeter on the Seacoast is sort of considered the Harvard of private schools. It's probably the top, or considered one of the top private schools in the world. Zuckerberg went there, for what it's worth, and that's right there in Exeter. So that's if you're an educator, that's actually a great opportunity to possibly work there, and for kids. I mean, it's expensive, but definitely very worth it. And then there's I think in Derry, they have sort of a semi-private school, Pinkerton Academy, where they contract out to send public school kids there, but it kind of operates as a private school. New Hampshire as a whole has all of these little private schools across the state. The native culture here is very much in favor of self-sufficiency and doing things on your own. So people have done that. It's just part of it, and you'll find them if you seek them out.
You reminded me with Phillips Exeter, in the Upper Valley, there's the Kimball Union Academy, KUA, and they're on our list of private schools that the money will follow to, which is kind of interesting. They're a prep school. Kids from there go to Yale, Harvard, and so on. And they also give financial aid up to about $15,000. Their tuition is $30,000. Add it up. If you live in my town and your kid gets accepted to KUA, you could, if your income is low enough, you could send your kid there for free. It's wild, but true. Education.
Any more questions?
All right, so this isn't really about grade school, but it's sort of along those lines. So you guys mentioned, I actually have two questions, but you guys mentioned sort of the political activism center like Keene and Manchester as well, and the arts, or the center where the arts are, about the Seacoast. And I'm wondering if you can address if there is sort of an intellectual center, if that's centered around Durham where the university is, or another town. And also, I would like the gentleman from Nashua and Manchester to address the issue of bagels as well. So, thank you.
Regarding his one question was about the intellectual capital of the state, and we may have four different answers here. I don't know what the answer to that is, because I would say that the UNH is the main. There are two big universities: University of New Hampshire, which is a state school, and then there's Dartmouth, which is an Ivy League school in the Upper Valley, Hanover area, and I'd say both those areas are good, but of course, as libertarians, we would say a lot of those people, they may be intellectuals, but they're very misguided. And the Durham area surrounding UNH is quite liberal in their local politics, and most of the staffers and academics there. But in technology, Nashua and Manchester probably lead in that area. There are a lot of tech companies in both those towns. There's a tech corridor in Manchester, some really high-end manufacturing and cutting-edge type stuff there. So from the sciences standpoint, I'd say Nashua and Manchester. And I don't know, I'm sort of going paleo, so I don't eat bagels. Can't answer that, sorry.
Yeah, and I'd say in Nashua, we spend an awful lot of time intellectualizing over beer. So if you're into that type of intellectual activity, Nashua is awesome. And I'm also, I try to be as paleo as possible, so I have no idea where to get a bagel. Sorry.
As far as intellectual stuff, any libertarian party, but low P, right? Just at somebody's house, you're going to find really good conversation.
Yes.
I was just
I'd like to say the Bagel Alley in Nashua is the place for bagels.
Okay.
And one of the intellectual capitals of the state is in their house, Dan and Carol McGuire.
I would sort of second the notion that if you're a technical, left brain kind of person, that Manchester, Nashua, that's where there are a lot of the companies that actually built the backbone of computing and the internet, radiated out of Boston and up through there. The Seacoast is a little more right brain. We've got marketing agencies, web startups, services, financial services, which I don't know what side of the brain that is, but so it's a little, and there's a lot of small shops. It's very kind of Jeffersonian. You have 5 people. There's a thing in New Hampshire. It's actually tough for me as a business owner to hire people, because if you're ambitious enough, you just go out and open up your own shop, which is great, and it results in a great situation for everybody, because you actually have a high percentage of businesses where you're dealing with the owner or one person removed from the owner. That's definitely my experience on the Seacoast. The companies are small. It's very personal. People care a lot, and it definitely shows.
Hi. Okay, so I'm from Missouri, and we don't really have much information about New Hampshire. And so the stuff that we have, we've pretty much Googled and stuff. And so one of the big articles was Cynthia Chase and how crazy she is. And so can you tell us a little bit more about like the Blue Hampshire and people who are anti-Free State Project, and how that is affecting people moving here or people who have already moved here?
Cynthia Chase was one of the best things that ever happened to us. Are you kidding?
I would say, the Blue Hampshire folks, it's really small. What the very encouraging thing here is that if you want to test it out, go to a bar, next time, if you after this or next time you come, and just chat up natives. And the native culture here is incredibly libertarian. And I had concerns about the Seacoast initially. I was like, okay, well, we're moving from New York to New Hampshire to be free, and we're going to move to the most socialist part of it, because there's all these, big government Democrats here or whatever. And I was actually loudly complaining about that to my wife, walking down the street, and a random guy turned around and said, "We're mostly libertarian here." Didn't know him. I haven't seen him again. So I was like, okay, the town responded. I have their blessing. But Blue Hampshire, those guys, if we're doing our job, if Mark and the state reps are doing their job, they're cutting direct benefits to the special interests. And those are the only people I can tell are upset, people who are directly losing their little perks and benefits.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The vast majority of the people in New Hampshire don't even know about the Free State Project. The political class certainly knows about us, and the conservative ones love that we're here. They ask us to double our size, keep bringing Free Staters. And then the authoritarian types, the far leftists, the big government folks, they're not happy with the Free State Project, which means we're doing something right.
There's a nice thing about the way the region is set up is, we're kind of like Israel in the Middle East. If you want that kind of lifestyle, if you want big government, if you want the services, you just have to drive half an hour in any direction. It's sort of like the people that are left here and they complain, they move up from Rhode Island or whatever, which they've already ruined, and people are like, why'd you move here? Well, you just came here to do what you did there, and we have these nice examples of how it's falling apart. There's a graph that went up about when Maine sort of went down they passed an income tax and went down a big government road versus New Hampshire, which didn't, and you can see incomes start to go down from there over the past 30 years, and they deal with taxing their social services up there and everything. So it's all very vivid, and this is the respite for people in the region.
Right. And I would add to that you're going to more likely find like-minded people in the rural areas than in the city areas. But that said, check out the towns first before you go there, because the ones that are getting bigger and the weird political dramas that go on, they tend to want to have more control over what goes on in the town. Go talk to people in the individual towns.
Yeah, definitely do a lot of talking, because there are certain things about towns that you may not know at first. Like, a certain town may just have an overactive police department. You want to stay away from there. Other towns might have intrusive homeowners associations. So you really, it behooves you to actually do a lot of research and talk to people about your specific town that you're interested in. So, any more questions? No. So, Mark, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the politics of each region.
Sure. I'm in the state legislature, by the way, so I follow this pretty closely. Woohoo! Yeah. Banging my head against the wall. It's fun being anarcho-capitalist libertarian in the state house. You know, something feels out of place, but we're making good progress there. There have been 19 Free Staters elected to the state house in New Hampshire over the years. It's pretty awesome. There are a number of them here in the room. Besides that, there are a lot of Free Staters who have been elected or appointed to town boards. Jody's on the school board. Paul over here recently joined our city council in Berlin, and I am on the planning board. And this is how we win, little by little. We win the hearts and minds of folks. Yeah, everything here is very accessible, town government-wise. We try to keep things small and accessible. The Speaker of the House just walked up. He's over there. He fully embraces the Free State Project and what we're doing here because we have the live free or die on our license plate. It's the greatest state motto there is. And there is that sort of tradition of libertarianism here. So we're pretty well received, but people get caught up in just in the inertia of big government and bureaucracy. That said, for regions, the more liberal big government regions are going to be where the colleges are, the college towns. Durham, as I mentioned, which is in the Seacoast area. Keene has a big college there. Even Manchester has a couple of colleges there. So you'll have that element. Upper Valley, around Dartmouth, even though it's a private school, it's still pretty liberal. So if you really don't want that kind of vibe, you'll want to avoid those towns and go to the more rural towns. I've had a couple people that were looking for a house, and he just Googled to see the election results for the presidential primary, and he saw where Ron Paul did the best. He said, "That's where I want to live." So there's actually a town in Richmond that Ron Paul won the primary. He was the #1 vote getter in that town. So the guy said, "That's where I want to live." Yeah. Carol McGuire is a state representative, and she's a political wonk also. She can give us some insight. Woohoo! Can you flip that on? It's on the top there. Slide that.
Okay. One of the very interesting things is that the North Country, which you would think would be very libertarian, because it's gotten so poor, old, and depopulated, is actually recipients of government grants. And so it is not as free-minded as you would like to think. The most fiscally conservative people are actually right on the border of Massachusetts. They're the people that have chosen to live in New Hampshire, even though many of them still work in Massachusetts. And so you've got varying dynamics depending on what the history of your area is. And most of the state has got toss-ups, a mixture of people. And like, for example, my town has got a no building inspector, and the fire chief is wonderful, and the police are pretty good, but we've got the worst planning board in Merrimack County. So you've got to decide what's important for you.
So accessibility-wise, what I meant by that was, your state reps. We have 400 New Hampshire state representatives for 1.5 million people, and if you want to know your state rep, you can. I had 2 of them that lived down the street from me. Like I have neighbors, but down the road, and they were. One of them was he could have been a Free Stater. He just was so libertarian-minded. It was amazing. He got voted out this year, though. We're hoping he'll come back next time.
One other point I wanted to add is I see a bunch of gradients in the state, and one of the things is how antagonistic you want to be in your activism. I think that moving east to west, the Keene, there's a lot of people who are quiet in Keene and being good neighbors and stuff, and I'm not saying the activists are bad neighbors, but they definitely are doing a certain style of activism that is antagonistic, and so anyone there may catch flack from that. The Seacoast is much more about inception, almost. Where we actually have libertarians on several of the town councils. They don't really go out and say, hey, I'm running as libertarian or I'm going to radically do this or that. They just go on there and they work. They see where they can cut. They see what they can do. So it's a quiet thing, and it works. It seems to work very well for us on the Seacoast.
So we are out of time, so we're going to wrap this up real quick. Do you have any parting words of advice for people that are thinking about moving?
Travel. I would say go see it for yourself. There's nothing we're going to be able to say that's going to really give you a visceral picture. And then let people know, because if there's groups for every region. What's that?
I was going to say that. I was like, you would want. No, go ahead.
Well, sorry. There are especially Facebook groups for each region, and if you talk to the people at the FSP, they're happy to connect you up. Our group is called the Free Coasters on Facebook. We've got the Free Coast page. So seek us out, and we will be happy to say hello. We love seeing new people come in. That's exciting for all of us in all the regions.
Yeah, absolutely. Get on the Free State Project site and just don't be shy. Just get out there, say, I'm going to visit New Hampshire in this period. Tell me who will meet me, and I'll make my trip go around you. Just give us the dates, and you're going to see how quickly people say, oh, yeah, in Manchester, and Keene, and wherever, come on by and visit. So don't be shy.
I think when you go home next week and back to reality and your regular jobs and your regular peers, and you say something to them about, you saw a speech by Doug French, or we were talking about Murray Rothbard, and people were open, caring, and they look at you like you have 3 heads, that's when you're going to know it's time to move to New Hampshire. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Enjoy PorcFest.
There's a bright